Hi, my name is Denis Taaffe. I'm a guitarist, and I want to welcome you to the making of volume 273, Modern Rock Guitar, volume 273, Darkness. And it is my latest album that I just completed, so I wanted to make this video before I forgot everything I encountered while making this album. And for those who are not familiar with my music, I'm basically a guitarist who uses guitar loops done on the fly, which means that I play parts on the guitar, and then I take part of the guitar I'm playing, and then with foot pedals, it records part of it, and then loops it. And then I go on to another part, and so on and so on and so on. I emulate bass on guitar and other sounds. And all my music is improvised on the spot. And what that means is, basically, I follow a musical structure, but I'm listening, and it's almost like doing multi-track recording on the fly. So you gotta think very quickly, what would sound good, what's with this part, and so on, and add parts together, and before you know it, you've got music that you're creating. It's very simple to make mistakes, very easy, if you hit a wrong note or that kind of thing. And this happens quite often, which is when I know I need to move on to the next track. Once I've explored, what musical direction it takes me in, and so on. So in any case, let me tell you about the making of volume 273. I guess the first question on probably most people's minds, why 273 albums? It even seems crazy to me. Why so many albums? And I'll tell you why. There's several reasons. The first reason is I enjoy listening to them, especially when I'm driving in my car and that kind of thing. After a couple of weeks of listening to the same album over and over again, you want to hear something new. So that's one reason. The second reason is, for me, it's kind of a journey from album 1 to where I am right now at 273. Every album I try to explore new musical directions, new musical ideas, new chords, new guitar sounds, those kinds of things. So every one of them builds on the next one, trying to do something a little different, maybe a little better, and try to see where it takes me musically. And it's been a great journey so far. So regardless, that's why I make so many albums. And with this particular album, I guess I'll talk about the cover, which is, Modern Rock Guitar, volume 273, Darkness. At first it was going to be called Haunted, but for some reason the font just, that word spelled out didn't look right, You could call it feng shui, and it just wasn't happening. So I switched it to Darkness, and that seemed to work okay. And like most albums, it's just a picture that I had, and I added, a guitar and a little likeness of me, and then put, Guitarist Denis Taaffe. And there's a reason I do that, It's not because I think I'm like the only guitarist on earth or something. The reason I do that is very simple. When I was growing up, and studying guitar especially, I would look for guitar albums to buy. And unfortunately, it was really hard to find out if an album was a guitar album or not. If you'd never heard of the guitarist, right, and it has his name, well, is it a guitar album, or is it a trumpet album, or what have you? So this way there's no mistaking. When it says guitarist, you can expect a guitar album. So that's why I do that. Okay, now moving on. For this particular album, I tried to do something different. And it's quite interesting, really, because I used my regular pedal board, which has an assortment of pedals, and I used Albion amps, as I normally do. However, surprisingly, a neighbor who lived a couple blocks down, who I've known for a while, said he was cleaning out his shed and found old music equipment that he wasn't using anymore. And so he gave it to me. I was very appreciative, and they were ready to sell. But one of them was a guitar, or not guitar, but an effects processor, but an old one. It was the Alesis Quadriverb. It allowed 4 effects at one time, and unlike modern processors, which are, usually 24-bit, super high quality, this one was a little older, so it was only 20-bit. And so I thought, oh well, I'll just, sell it. But in actuality, before I did that, I went ahead and hooked it up to my system just to try it. And I was very surprised at the sound. The sound was really good, I thought. And it really inspired me to create this album. So really, I have my neighbor to thank for volume 273, which is inspired by the use of the Alesis Quadriverb, and I used it on every track, I believe. So you'll see what it sounds like here. And it sounded pretty good, I think. And definitely it was a little different, Okay, well, let's get to it. So track 1, I called it Max, and as in maximum. I don't remember why. Now this is a very interesting track because there are actually, as I was coming up with the idea, I came up with these chords that play, and then you'll hear some things that are actually not quite mistakes, but not quite what I wanted really at first. So I did this thing, I often do this, where I'll play a chord, and it's to remind me later when I'm editing it to cut that part out and to start the track there. However, with this track, interestingly, even though it's not perfect, there are 2 places where I did this, and I was going to cut it out and start the track after the beginning. However, it seemed to fit the track so well, and when you cut it, it no longer made sense. So let's take a listen to that, and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, and remember, audio is just from the camera, so it's just to give you an idea. All right, so let's take a listen to track 1, and you'll hear the quadriverb as well. Okay, so here's the chords that I was coming up with, and you hear them going da na na na. That's the Elisa's quadriverb. So I thought these are pretty interesting chords. So this was a formation of the idea for track 1. And this was going to be just to test the Elisa's quadriverb, not knowing it would be for an album. Okay, here's the bass idea I came up with. So there I'm looping the chords and playing the bass. Coming up with ideas, and you'll hear where I play the chord saying cut this part out and start the track there. And that's coming up. Yeah, I'm very pleased with the guitar sound. That quadriverb really was kind of the missing link a little bit to the sound I ordinarily get. Now here's something interesting. You'll hear the bass sound, and it's great for an intro track. And basically the way it works is I had the Elisa's quadriverb. I just plugged it into the end of my chain, the signal chain, which means everything was going through the quadriverb, including the bass sound. And you'll hear it all of a sudden become this really big, kind of washy bass sound. And that's the reason why you'll hear it here. Let's go to that. I think it's about here. So there's the bass sound. It's a real solid sound. But now it goes through the quadriverb, and let's see what happens. There. It becomes this huge bass sound. Okay, also notice that right around there, there's a part that repeats. And that's because the length of the loop wasn't long enough, so it replayed what I had first started, and it sounds like a ghost kind of melody. You'll hear it here. I'll point it out. Right there. So, and then you'll hear me play that chord saying, hey, cut that. But in the end I didn't, because I really like the way it builds. Kind of it's building the track. And for me I really like that as an intro track for the album. Okay, there I'm adding a second part. Okay, now did you hear right there how it just cut out all of a sudden? And what that was, hold on. What that was, when it cut out all of a sudden, that's because I hit on the looping pedal I hit stop instead of overdub, so it just stopped the loop. And at first I thought, oh, well, I'll have to start over. But when I listen back to the track, it works. Because it suddenly stops, but the bass keeps on going, luckily. Let's hear that again. Okay. Right there. Just stops. And the bass keeps on going. Now, did you hear right there? There's actually one wrong note. And I could have cut it out, but it just ruined the track. So I left it in. I'm not proud of it, but it's there. But if you're not listening for it, it goes by pretty quickly. But it's definitely a wrong note if you listen closely. Okay, that's where it cuts off. The bass keeps on going. Right there. So, right there, there's a wrong note. And in fact, remember when I told you I play those chords that say, hey, I made a mistake, so start the track from here. And there you can hear it. It's that chord that goes bam, 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 and you'll hear it here. But strangely, it seems to fit the track as well. Okay, there's a cutoff, then there's a wrong note coming up. Right there. And now I'm going to play that chord. Saying cut right there. But it seems to work. Strangely enough. And this happens a lot of times. I think it was a minor 7 flat 5. Just played it. But somehow it seems to work. Okay, so now I've got a better idea of which direction to take the track in. But see, had I started the track from here, it doesn't work quite right. I don't know how to explain it. It didn't sound right. So I left that all in. Not usually something I would do, but it just fits the track better that way. Okay, there's additional chords on top of the loops that are already playing. This track was kind of difficult because it's really running at a slower tempo than I'm used to. So it's real slow. So to get the timing right is really difficult. Anyway. Okay, so let's move on. So that's the introductory track. Even with its flaws, I just like the track. And I think I made the right decision in leaving those flaws in, because from beginning to end, when you hear those chords and the way it builds up, it actually works. Whereas when you cut it, it doesn't sound like a complete track. It sounds like half a track or something. Okay, so let's move on to track 2. And I just submitted this album as to be distributed and released, and I can honestly say I don't remember what I called the track. It was something different, so we'll just call it track 2. And it's actually one of the tracks where I really appreciated the quadriverb, really sounding different. And this track in particular, I like it because I'm a big fan of Tangerine Dream. You know, they did a lot of, it's a German synthesizer band. They did a lot of film soundtracks. One of them was Risky Business, and they have this kind of almost mechanical type sound. And so here I'm trying to kind of recreate that, but on guitar with loops. So let's take a little listen to that one. Yeah, and I love that kind of patterns on guitar that repeat and then are delayed and then looped. And when you start putting several patterns together, you get this kind of sound, which I really like. The difficulty is the timing between the tracks. They all have to fit together. And when you're playing these patterns, it's real difficult to get the timing right. In fact, I should say for the timing, and I was too lazy to hook all that up. So, but usually, one way that I can help with my own timing when I'm playing, it's really hard to remember the timing when you have no reference, you know, to what timing you're trying to get. This particular one's at 120 beats per minute, and so I have to remember to play at 120 beats per minute. And usually I would have headphones on, and it would play a drum beat at 120 minutes, and you wouldn't hear it on the recording, but I would hear it, and that would keep my timing perfectly. Here it's you know, there's no reference, so I did the best I could to play. And you know, I suppose if my technique was perfect, and I had a reference and could say, okay, this is 120 beats per minute, then I wouldn't need that. So here I did the best I could, and well, you know, 95% of the time it's right on. There's a couple parts, especially when the loop starts up again, you know, plays a cycle and then starts again. Unfortunately, there's a little delay there that kind of throws it off a little bit, but then it catches up, and you can hear that a little bit here. And that's the difference between doing this kind of thing on a synthesizer, which is, you know, basically a computer, so it's right on every single time, compared to a human, you know, doing it on guitar. It's very difficult to get it perfect every single time. So anyway, but it's close enough for now, until I get that darn drum machine business hooked up. Okay. Anyway, I really like this track. So here, I'm layering patterns, repeating patterns that are delayed on guitar and then looped. Remember what I said about it? The loop repeating a little slower than it should, right there. But then it catches back up here. Okay, now on top of that, to emulate keyboards, I do guitar swells, and that's where you pick a note and then turn up the volume, and you don't hear the pick part, and so it sounds like a swell, a note coming out of nowhere. It sounds a little bit like a keyboard. Now in this particular case, I would do double stops, and that's 2 notes at a time, and you play them with the pick. You hit it with the pick, then you turn up the volume. Now here's what's interesting. If you listen very closely on this track, and in fact other tracks, you'll hear this kind of a graininess, kind of a almost a distorted sound a little bit. And there's a very good reason why. I wear out those volume pots on the guitar quite often, and unfortunately, well, this one's on its way out, and you can hear it. It's kind of crackly, so you hear a little bit of crackling, and that's the reason why I do need to get it replaced. Just been too busy playing and recording, and they never have that part in stock. I always have to order it. Okay, let's continue, because I really like this track and the way it develops. Now, keep in mind that the Alesis Quadriverb is there, and I just picked a preset. My other sounds, are designed specifically to create the tone I'm familiar with, but with the Alesis, I wasn't sure what it would produce, but I just went with it. So that's track 2, and I really like that track. I suppose, if I was going to keep the Alesis in my setup, I would kind of refine that sound a little bit more. Okay, let's move on to track 3. Again, I don't remember what I called the track when I submitted the album. I wish I had the list with me. But, see, the album's not out yet. It should be out in a day or two. Okay, anyway. So here, just the draft name is Smooth. And the reason why is very much those swells to emulate keyboards and things. So let's take a listen to that one. And here you'll hear that grainy pot, unfortunately, that scratchy pot potentiometer, that turns up the volume. And the tempo's very slow here. But I like the vibe of it, if you like. Kind of introspective and but relaxing at the same time. Lately I've been very much into finding unusual chord voicings. Yeah. And so here it just builds from there. Let's fast forward a little bit. there, what I really like is these swelled notes. And when I had the Ulysses Quadriverb on it, and they swelled, they made a very nice long sound that kind of decays slowly. You'll hear it, kind of a high-pitched sound. Right there. Yeah. Alright, let's move on to track 4. And, well, same thing, the name is, the temporary name is Man. Okay, and it's track 4. Let's hear that one. Now I can tell you this one right away has the two favorite guitar sounds of mine. One are the kind of cordial open string sounds. You play double stops and then you add an open string and you let them all ring out. It gives a very nice sound. And then the usual pattern playing. And so I loop those together. And I like it because it kind of gives it's a minor, it's an E minor, so it's kind of gives kind of a eerie, dark tone. So it fits the mood of the album, darkness, right? Kind of inspired, it's October, and so, it's Halloween and so on. And there's no question that I was definitely inspired by David Gilmour, Pink Floyd, like the Guitar on the Wall, for example. When you hear that delayed guitar, dun, 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 and it's just droning on one string, and you can hear that. And what I found fun is with the quadriverb, it gave you such a delay that I was playing the open string, on a tempo, but at the same time, I had enough time to put fills in, playing the part on the upper strings. And so you'll hear when you put those together, it's just one guitar, but it sounds like multiple guitars. But the whole time, that bottom string's going da 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 da. It builds a little tension. And there's my favorite pattern playing. I just love that sound right there. And that's really mostly done by Eventide delays. And I should tell you that by this point, I'm totally in my own world when I'm recording. It's like I'm, just completely lost. And so I just go with it and inspired. And when I record an album, what I do is I just play one after another and just let the recorder record, an hour's worth, including the breaks in between. I'll go back and listen to it and then edit it, track by track. And some work better than others. I really like that one. Okay, number 5. Track 5, temporary name, Wait. Let's hear that one. And I believe it's part 2 of number 4. Let's see. Pretty much. Same idea as previous tracks, is pattern playing, loops. And now I've hit upon, from previous tracks, that with the Alesis quad reverb and the swell preset that I have. Swell, not as in nice, but as in where you pick a note, turn up the volume, and then the delay carries that note, and you can hear it here. There's one of the upper notes. So that really, when I hear things like that, it gets me closer and closer to my dream of having, doing Tangerine Dream type things on guitar. Little did I know. Getting pretty close. And I really love those swells of notes. They do sound very much like keyboard. Okay, let's move on to track 6. And track 6, temporary name Motus. For that's the code word they use for the president. It's just a temporary name. I forget what I called it on the album. It's 5 minutes and 53 seconds, so let's take a listen to that. Okay. Now here, remember, a lot of my music is inspired by or made to be really film music. What I would imagine if I was doing a film score or a scene, doing the music for a scene, whether it's creating tension, or if it's a relaxing scene, or if they're driving through the city, that kind of thing. And I equate those, from film to creating the music for it. So really I'm creating music for, unfortunately, no film that exists, but that's what I imagine when I'm playing. So let's hear this one. And this one I wanted to start it differently, because really every track has been guitar right off the bat. And so here I wanted to try something different. So starting the track, I started with backwards guitar. If you play something, it plays it backwards, and it gives it kind of a different sound. Then I looped that and added these swells. Sounds kind of like keyboards in a way, but it's guitar as well. Let's hear that. Yeah. So there's the backwards guitar. And I can't remember what notes I was playing. I'm hearing that, I like it, but I'd like to see where it goes. So let's fast forward a little bit. Let's see where I took this. Okay, and there I've added a bass part. Which goes da na 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 na. But it's kind of hard to hear because that Alesis quad reverb is engaged, and so kind of makes it phasey. If I had to do it again, I would run the bass sound bypassing the quad reverb and have the quad reverb only on the guitar part. And there I'm using a very slow tempo. either 88 beats per minute or 100. No more than that. It's a lot harder to play at slower tempos, and it really isolates your guitar parts. So if you make a wrong note or something, it really stands out. But it gives you this atmosphere, which I really like. So that gives it a change of pace, starting out with those kind of keyboard type swells instead of guitar. Okay, now this is track 7, Moth, and this track is 10 minutes and 34 seconds long. Track 7, and there are 9 tracks on the album total. So this one's 10 minutes and 34 seconds. Let's see what this is. I really like these chord voicings. They're new chord voicings that I've been working on. And then I put the swelled notes on top of it. Tempo, so to find a bass part is really hard. So I would play a note and play it a couple times to space it out, because it's a really long span from note to note. Let's move on. I'm going to fast forward that since it's 10 minutes. Let's go to the 5-minute mark, or 5:29. There's a pattern playing, and over those chords, they're still being looped. And there I've added some guitar fills. Is backwards guitar loops, or loop playing in reverse. Right here, play that. See right there, those repeating patterns that are looped are spot on timing wise, which on some of the other tracks they weren't quite as spot on as this track. Okay, well, let's move on to track 8, and this is called Loop, and the reason I called it Loop, that's just a generic name. I put a different name for the album. But the reason is that it, while I liked I think it's a lot of pattern playing as well, and I like the sound of it, but it doesn't quite flow. It doesn't move very much. All right. Part of the reason it's only 2 minutes and 46 seconds long. Let's try that one. Number 8. I really like the atmosphere of this one. Now here's something interesting about this one is at the very beginning, it was basically, I think, was it E, C, D, or something like that. Anyway, the intro had these chords, and one of them was this chord, and I added the open strings and discovered, my God, it sounds exactly like a chord Joe Satriani uses in one of his songs. It was unintentional, but I cut it out anyway, because then I discovered it didn't really match the rest of the song because I changed it the next time around. So I cut that out because it didn't really fit. Alright, so let's take a listen to that. And you see how it doesn't really move, it kind of hovers there. Okay, let's fast forward a bit. Darkness, so trying to convey that a little bit with this track. Lots of loops and regular playing of guitar as well. Okay, now the last track, temporary name, sound 55, and it's a really short track. I mean, it's like, I think, a minute 27, but I'm glad it's on there, and the reason is it has pattern playing that's looped, which I just love that sound. Unfortunately, my friend asked me, man, why are you using delays on all these tracks? But I just like the sound. I don't know. It's funny, when I played album 1 through 200, I used a lot of distortion, kind of lead playing, distortion. And I guess as the older I got, the more I asked myself, well, does it sound very musical? And most of the time it really didn't. But I mean, there's a place for it, don't get me wrong, and I still use it, but just not as often, I guess. Anyway, here is this one, but there's something very interesting about this one, and it's the ending, and it is due to the Elisa's Quadriverb, and I'm glad I got it on there. And it's a sound that decays naturally, rather than a fade out that I did with a computer or something. It fades out naturally, and I'll point that out. So anyway, here's this one. So there's the pattern playing. And this right here is just one guitar, not looped, and playing with the delays. I just love that sound. I eventually loop it, but right now I'm just playing it. Here I just came up with, I was on a D and I went to a G, and then back to an A. Okay. Well, let's move on to the ending and you'll see what I mean. I really like this. Okay, we're at 113, it ends at 127, so here's the ending. Yeah, here it is. And it's a sound, sounds almost like a keyboard, but it's guitar, and it's because of that Elisa's Quadriverb that delays the sound. that was a neat sound. And a great way to end the album, I thought. So anyway, there's the album. It's CD 273, tracks 1 through 9. It's 41 minutes and 25 seconds, which is really kind of short for a 9-track album. But I think it conveys definitely the mood I was going for. And man, I absolutely love it when I'm driving or late at night is really when I like to listen to this album. I suppose that's why I called it Darkness. That and I guess the picture cover too. Okay, so now while it's being released, I'm going to be working on volume 274. And boy, I have I'm still working on my pedal board, so I have a whole bunch more pedals to hook up and things to try. But I definitely, I'm not going to have the same settings as I did for this album. I'm going to try something different and see where it leads me sound-wise. So there you go. That's the making of volume 273. Boy, looking back, my first album was in 1999, so I guess I've been working on that since then. I don't know where time has gone, but I guess it's quite a few albums. Now, keep in mind, from volume 1 to volume 200, my sound has changed and evolved and changed. And at volume 200, my style really changed. So from 200 to 273 so far is kind of my new style. I like to call it New Age rock guitar. The reason being it's not quite the rock guitar found on volume 1 through 200. So, and we'll see how it develops. I've got all kinds of things to try. Adding drums, different sounds, and those kinds of things. So, that remains to be seen. But yeah, so volume 1 through 200 are really my old rock style albums, and then 200 to 273 is the New Age rock guitar, if you like. Kind of hard to classify it. To me, it's more film music, and for right now, I kind of like it better than the old rock things, which were really, a lot of extended guitar solos and those kinds of things. So here it's, I don't know, it creates moods and atmospheres, and that's what my music's about, really. Think of it as, I guess each track is like a painting, and so you have a certain style or an emotion, whether it's a tension, eeriness, happiness, relaxed, all those kinds of things. Okay, so there you go. So I'll see you next time.